you're going to be okay. I would have said, what makes you say that? Nothing right now seems okay, right? My medical deal, none of that's okay. That's probably not going away. Sports, well, I'm pretty small. I don't see sports as being an avenue. You couldn't tell me when I was in middle and high school. I didn't even know what triathlon was. It's not really a huge sport in America necessarily. You don't have a ton of high schools with triathlon teams. You couldn't tell me, hey, in a few short years, you're going to compete in an Ironman. Yeah, I know you don't know what an Ironman is, but you're going to compete in one, and you're going to almost die. You're actually going to fail. So this is a project that I've been thinking about for probably at least 2 years. And the heart of this project is all about the teenagers listening to this video. It's about the 13-year-old middle schooler that doesn't feel right in his or her own body, right? Because it's tough being in middle school. You're still growing. You're still figuring things out. The world's still really new. And it's about even the 17 and 18-year-old, especially the 17 and 18-year-old, who is about to take on a lot more responsibility and authority in their life. There's kind of a correlation there, authority and responsibility, and that's kind of what we all want. We all want it yesterday. We all want to have control of our lives, right? That's kind of the struggle of growing up. You always want that next step, right? And surely that's only a teenager problem, right? Adults don't face that at all, right? You always want to be bigger than you think you are, right? That we all have that desire. We all want to be significant. I think that's a universal law, right? You have great speakers, great preachers, and that's kind of what they're all getting at. You all want to feel significant, and the reality is you are significant. For whatever reason or another, you start believing lies. And it starts in middle school. It starts in high school. It starts because somebody around you, maybe even somebody you trust, didn't give you the support that you needed. And it can only take one person, whether it's a classmate at school, even a parent or somebody that you trust, to say something negative, and it outweighs even dozens of other people saying things that are positive. And it builds up. And you create these thought habits early on, and oftentimes they don't go away for years. I know when I was in middle school, going back to the personal image thing, that was a huge struggle for me. And how I looked growing up, especially height. I was kind of the short kid of the mix, which was a real struggle because basketball was kind of my primary sport for a little while. Didn't quite jive though once I kind of stopped growing and everyone else kept growing. So never had a future in being in the NBA, unfortunately, as much as I love Michael Jordan, as did every kid in the 90s. But you have these struggles growing up, right? And you start creating these thought processes, and oftentimes you don't even recognize it. You start creating these thought processes that go unnoticed, and then you can even be in your 20s, maybe even 30s and beyond, before you even recognize what was really going on. And the struggle is that you have no idea of what's going on, and you don't know what you don't know. And the reality, though, is that, I'll share an example. For instance, I'll share kind of an example. One thing that I've kind of had to deal with is numerous visits to the emergency room. So not to go too in detail, so I've got a medical condition called CAH for short, and one thing that it does is that essentially I lose extra salt, extra sodium in my sweat, and I easily get dehydrated. Somewhat easily. I kind of push the boundaries on that. But scientifically, I get dehydrated easier than others. And so I've had numerous visits to the ER. And here's an example of big picture thinking. So I recall my last visit to the ER was last year. Was doing my 4th Ironman and didn't quite make it. Got about 80 miles on the bike, I think it was. No, it was 111. I had 100. I had about 10 more miles on the bike. So I swam 2.4 miles, and I biked about 100, and I made it to the last rest stop, and then it was just downhill from there. Just downhill. All I had to do was just coast downhill. But I had to make the executive decision. I wasn't feeling very well. I hadn't used the restroom in 40 miles, even though I had drank a lot of Gatorade, a lot of water, and kind of rested for about an hour, and adrenal crisis set in, started plummeting. Had the ER call, ambulance called. They ended up going to the wrong rest stop, so it took a little while for them to get me. It took me to the hospital. That took a little while. They couldn't even IV me in the EMS for whatever reason. Someone wasn't licensed, or they didn't have IV supplies. And I still remember the nurses that took care of me at the ER. Praise God for them. And it gets you thinking, these nurses that are trained and that were prepared, and that, this was just a recent, somewhat recent experience. What they did on that particular day to essentially save my life began when they were probably 13 or 14 and decided, I want to go into the medical field. Big picture thinking, when you're 13 or 14, you may start thinking, yeah, I want to be a nurse, or yeah, I want to be a doctor or an engineer, which I'm a civil engineer. I can go more into that, or a banker, or an entrepreneur. You just want to create products, or you want to be a pastor. You want to support people in their walk of faith. Whatever it is, when you're 13, 14, or even 18, you're often not thinking about those moments that you'll have years down the line because of the choices that you're making right now, because of the interests and the passions that you're having right now. You can't quite put your finger on it, but you know that you want to make an impact somewhere. You're just drawn to something, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be one particular thing. I can't tell you what it is that you want to do. That has to come from your heart. And you have to start looking at the big picture, because you have to have your why to determine your what. You have to figure out why you want to do what you think you want to do. And I don't care who you are. I don't care what they've said about you in school, what your so-called friends have said, what those kids at school who you kind of avoid in the hallway because maybe they've said a few things and you don't know how to fight back, and maybe you don't want to fight back because it doesn't seem right. No matter what those people have said, there is a purpose for your life. I firmly believe that. And you're never too young to start thinking about that purpose. Whatever it is, just start following it. And one way that you can do that, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, I don't even know exactly where I'm going with this. I started recording at about 11 p.m. Actually just got back from a small group with my adult small group. I lead an adult small group, 20s, some 30s, with Seacoast Church, and also lead a rising 10th grade, right? Got to give them respect. As far as I know, they all graduated from 9th grade. Rising 10th grade, if you're watching this somewhat live, somewhat recent, it's June, early June right now. Graduation just happened. School year's over. And it's time for new beginnings, right? So, for instance, for me, when I played football and baseball in high school and some other sports that didn't really work out, senior year, so I grew up playing tennis. Senior year, I thought, yeah, why not? I'll just play football, baseball. I'll start back tennis. I haven't played that in 3 years, but surely it can't be too hard. I'll try out cross country or track because, I mean, I can run, so why not try track? And I tried soccer. I actually made it into one soccer game. I was pretty proud of that. And I got the ball once and I passed it like an idiot. I should have just shot it. But could have had a claim to fame. And then after that game, actually, I had to sit the bench on my baseball team for missing practice for the soccer game, so I had to quit soccer. Anyway, where was I going with that? With all the sports. Anyway, so yeah, where was I going with that with the sports? Yeah, rule of thumb, just pick a few sports. Don't try to play them all. Although senior year, it's all about relationships with the coaches. That's the ticket. So I also went to a fairly small high school. We had maybe 600 students and maybe 120 in the graduating class. And great school. Academic Magnet was the name of the school. We were the brainiacs, so-called, or at least we were able to fool them for the most part. So you had to pass some kind of test to get in. Great school, though. Prepared me well. So really what I want to talk about, though, aside from sharing a few stories, is that you don't know what you're capable of. Now I want to say that again because I don't know if you're listening, kind of half tuning in. I don't know if maybe you're shooting some hoops, maybe you're on a run, maybe you're talking to somebody, this in the background, whatever it is, and that's cool. I want to tell you, whether you're 13, 15, 18, even into college, I want to tell you this right now. You have no idea what you're capable of. I tell you, when I was 13, barely making it on the basketball team, right? Because when you're 13, whatever sport you play, tennis or basketball, that's like your life, right? I mean, you don't got to worry about paying a mortgage or working or whatever else. You're just playing sports and living life and trying to stay out of trouble. And if you would try to tell me when I was 13, 4'10", whatever I was, that, it's going to be okay. Through all the struggles, you'll make it to, I think on my license, my driver's license, I think I had it listed as 5'8". It's good enough for me. You'll be 5'8". I would have been, oh, buddy, 5'8". I made it. When I was 13, it would take years. It would take a lot of pain and struggle. One other side effect, I mentioned the CAH, and there may even be listeners watching that have CAH, similar conditions. There's a lot to it. I can't give it justice. I can't give any of these medical conditions justice. What I can tell you is that your medical condition can be a blessing. It can be a platform. It can be something that fuels you. And I can honestly say the things that were most difficult to go through, especially when I was a teenager, give me the greatest fuel now that I'm 26 and beyond, making it through middle school, high school, college. Went to a military college. Great experience there. Pursued Army. And the medical thing got in the way, so maybe I'll pursue it again at some point. But I kind of like my life right now as a civil engineer and trying this video thing out for the next generation. But if you had told me when I was 13, 15, whatever, that you're gonna graduate from military college, you're gonna get a degree in engineering, I would have said, wow, no way, not me. There's nothing that really indicates that. I guess I get okay grades, but I'm nothing special. I'm not the popular kid at school, really. I'm just trying to gain a few inches on my height here so I can kind of somewhat blend in a little bit. And then I went to, like I said, a high school where you had to test in. No one from my middle school went to high school. I didn't know anybody. And and that was a little bit of a challenge, right? And I know there's students out there, you either just move somewhere, you're going to a new school, or you just upgraded, going to the big boy leagues in high school, or you're off to college, and maybe you have worries about fitting in or finding your crowd, or having friends, hanging out. You're worried about the experience. I would say worry less about who you're around and worry more about who you are. Become who you are. Have a vision for who you want to be. If you aim at nothing, you hit it every time, as I said. I can't take credit for that. So there's really nothing to worry about. It's all in your mind, right? Like I said, there's a bigger picture at stake. You have no idea what you're capable of. Just because you can't imagine what you're capable of doesn't mean you're not capable of it. I mean, it's incredible. The amount of impact, this one life, it's tough to comprehend whenever you're a teenager, right? I mean, I'm 26. I'm shooting for 100. So, as far as the gas gauge go, I consider myself, I got 3/4 tank left to go. God willing, maybe that'll work out that way. And I have to continually expand my mind on what am I capable of? Where am I called to really impact this world? Because you only get one shot, right? You only get one shot, so why not make the best of it? Right? Don't let others drag you down. Right? In middle school, high school, wherever, don't let culture drag you down. Drag up the culture, pull it up, make it better. Everyone's waiting for you listeners out there, the people around you are waiting for you to make an impact in the culture. I mean, I can't necessarily do it. I mean, I'm not in your schools. I'm not in your teams. I'm not in the clubs at school. I'm not in your cities, but you're all there. And you all can make a huge impact, right? So if you're watching this, kind of current live here in June, it's the beginning of summer, what if you said this summer, I'm going to make it my goal to develop myself and my friends to become the best we can be and to take the school by storm next year, to encourage others around me, to make my teams better. It doesn't have to even be grandiose. You don't have to come with a letter in your hand, handwritten to everyone in school with flowers and butterflies. It doesn't have to come with a song. Half the time, all you got to do is smile. I'll tell you, one experiment you can do, whether it's in the halls or wherever you like to go, just count how many people you smile at and count how many people smile back. Right? Because I know whenever you're growing up, it's tough. It's often tough to have a smile. For me, it's tough to have a smile sometimes. Sometimes you have to rationalize to have the smile because you're not always going to feel like you should have a smile on your face. Life doesn't always feel exceptional, right? There's highs and lows. But I don't know that means that you're supposed to frown during the lows. It's probably the opposite. If anything, you should probably smile more during the lows than during the highs, right? Because that's going to make the lows so much easier to get through. And a lot of you just need to smile. I remember my parents telling me that whenever I was growing up, in pictures, and I get it. I'm a guy growing up, guys don't like to share their feelings, that kind of thing. And I get it. A lot of times you just don't want to smile in photos. You don't want to smile to people. You just kind of want to have an emotionless look on your face. And I get it. But why hide the gift that you could give to other people? And you're only hurting yourself because you're going to get fulfillment whenever you give that joy to others. Right? They say, I like Tony Robbins talks about life is all about growing and giving. And for those young folks who don't know, Tony Robbins is kind of a big-time personal development speaker. Great man. Kind of one of my influences online. And Life's all about growing and giving. And a lot of people, they don't get that early on. A lot of people don't get that at all. But it's universal no matter how old you are. So why start growing and giving when you're 18 or when you're 22? Like, a lot of people consider their life to be starting when they're done with school kind of thing, out of college, or not even you don't even have to go to college necessarily. It's not always a wise decision, in my opinion. A lot of people consider their life starting when they're done with school. A lot of people, they don't even get done with school until they're 30-something if you're trying to be a doctor. So your life starts now. It's already started if you haven't already gotten on the bandwagon. And so one of the keys to life, growing and giving. How do you grow? What does that look like? Right now, your body's growing automatically, and you're basically forced to go to school. So in that regard, you're kind of forced to grow mentally and intellectually as well. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're growing personally. Try to distinguish those things. And whenever you make a decision to grow personally, and I get it, I didn't make an intentional decision to grow personally. Like I wasn't really fully aware, I don't think, of growing personally. Probably until I was about 23. I mean, you're always growing. You're always observing your tools that God has given us for our bodies, our sight, our hearing, our mind. You're always collecting data and interpreting it based on your experiences, your past, and making conclusions from it. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you're intentionally growing. You're just kind of letting it happen. And very few great things happen unintentionally. And I know that all of you, no matter how old you are, again, 13, 15, 18, whatever, you want to be great. I mean, I know that's human nature. You want to be great. You want to be big. No one says, "Oh gosh, I just wish I was smaller. I just wish I was less significant. I just get too much attention and people just like me too much." Nobody says that. You want to be big. You want to make a huge impact. No matter how old you are, it's universal. It's why you're created. And you're created, and a lot of people struggle with, I think, teens, and yeah, surely adults don't struggle with this, is they don't feel comfortable in who they are and who they're made to be, because they see magazines, they see videos, TV shows, media. I mean, we're swamped in this day and age with screens in our pockets, social media. A lot of people just need to cut their social media. Let me just tell you that. I cut my Facebook 2 or 3 years ago, I think. I tell you, the amount of hours, I'm pretty sure it's freed up 4.8 million hours of my life to do other things since then. It's amazing. It's been great. But we're swamped with screens and media and marketing. People don't even realize it. It's all marketing we're getting swamped with. There's tons of money going on that we don't even recognize it, and we're getting played half the time, especially students. Just getting played, scrolling on the infinite scrolls on social media with marketing ads being played in the background, going into your subconscious, making you think that you have to think certain things, and putting trash in your mind and flooding your mind. You're just getting played, all because these guys and girls that run these organizations, they probably have good intentions to some degree, but at root, a lot of their jobs, social media or whatever, their job is to get you addicted. A lot of people are addicted to things and they don't even realize it. Anyway, that's kind of a little rant on social media, maybe more on that to come. But we're swamped with these images of what we're supposed to look like, what we're supposed to sound like, what we're supposed to be like. And certainly there's moral issues that you want to avoid. Certainly there's good, better, best, perhaps. But 99% of what we are is totally unique to us. And no one can tell you you're supposed to be a different way. Your parent, and that's a struggle. I get it. I'm not a parent, but I get it. Students, you probably need to understand your parents want so much for you. I mean, they want to see you thrive and grow, and they want you to be better than they are. And by and large, the only way that they know how is to basically make you a 2.0 version of them. I mean, that's really the only way naturally that people know how, the parents know how to raise their kids, is try to make them a 2.0 version. It's very uncomforting to think that the parents' children are going to be a totally unique copy. I mean, it's just uncomfortable. It's natural. It's not. I don't think it's necessarily, and this is just my perspective, I don't think it's necessarily right or wrong, but I think it's something to observe. Even my folks, they're pretty big into politics, which is incredibly important. And personally, I've supported political races. I've even interned in D.C. I might even share some stories there. I've even interned on Capitol Hill in D.C. One summer. But as of right now, I'm just not interested in politics. I'm just rather disgusted in our politicians and the fact that they're more about supporting their own agendas and support groups to make sure that they're elected, because it becomes their primary job. I mean, why is being a politician a career path? It's supposed to be like a volunteer job, right? I mean, is this not what the founding fathers were trying to avoid whenever they set term limits on the president? Now, of course, the president hasn't really upset term limits. I think it happened once in our 200 and some odd years. But congressmen and senators, obviously, they'll serve for 40 years. Some mayors will serve even longer. So that's kind of another rant that I'll defer on for now. But politics is just something that I grew up around and I can appreciate, but it's not my passion right now. Maybe one day I'll consider it an avenue in some regard, but and I know, and I didn't recognize it necessarily growing up, but I know it's probably a struggle for my parents whenever they're wanting me to be this certain image, and I'm not that image. And I know there's conversations with parents and students, across the country in that regard, of parents, wanting to lead their children, their students, their teenagers to be a certain way, which is certainly they have a right to, but also it's not their parents' life to make those decisions, especially whenever that teenager's about to be an adult. And it's a struggle, right? Like I said, we all want, no matter how old we are, we all want that next step. We're all wanting to take control of our lives and to be bigger. And I'm excited, right? I think the first step is understanding what's going on. And that, by no means, like I said, this is the tip of the iceberg. This is just a tip. This is just a little bit I'm trying to cover of why I'm making this video, of what I see in the future, in youth culture, in teens, in our culture, really. I mean, the teens are going to eventually be taking this seat. The teens in 10 years are going to be taking my job, whatever that job is, whether it's an engineer, whether it's just talking to a screen, posted up on YouTube. And those 10 years are going to fly by. You're going to be there before you know it. That's it. I'm excited. I'm excited for what I believe God is going to do through all of you across the country. And I don't know how many people are going to hear these words. I mean, I really have no idea. But like I said, when I was 13, you couldn't tell me, "Hey, you're gonna be okay." I would have said, "What makes you say that? Nothing right now seems okay." Right? My medical deal, none of that's okay. That's probably not going away. Sports, well, I'm pretty small. I don't see sports as being an avenue. You couldn't tell me when I was in middle and high school. I didn't even know what triathlon was. It's not really a huge sport in America necessarily. You don't have a ton of high schools with triathlon teams. You couldn't tell me, hey, in a few short years, you're going to compete in an Ironman. Yeah, I know you don't know what an Ironman is, but you're going to compete in one, and you're going to almost die. You're actually going to fail. All right, so I was 20 years old, competing in my first Ironman, and just straight up almost died twice. As if once wasn't enough, right? I mean, started swimming to train for this thing, for triathlon. Started swimming. I couldn't even go to the deep end. I was like, there's probably sharks down there. I can't go to the deep end. I don't know if I'll make it back alive. I don't have any floaties. There's no lifeguard on duty. I'm just going to swim this like 15 yards to the shallow end and back. And, yeah, got up to where I could swim, do the 2.4, and got a bike. The bike was always pretty good. Got the shoes, got the clip shoes, and got the good bike and all that. Got the ASICS shoes that I've run 4 Ironmans on. Got the shoes on check. Got nutrition supplements. Did all the training. Was all ready to go. Actually, I was ready to go, but I wasn't ready to go. I literally went. This was maybe 6 years ago. Literally went from doing my first 5K, and I got a 3rd place medal from it. Thank you very much. For my age category, there were maybe 50 racers. Yeah, I wasn't very good. Literally did my first 5K. Now, I could run further than that, but first 5K race in January, and competed in an Ironman November 13th, I believe was the date. Talk about crazy. But man, it was a blast. And trained up. I tell you, that's the exciting thing when you don't know. I told y'all, you don't know what you're capable of. Don't let that discourage you. That's exciting. You have no idea. It's like life is full of one big surprise. Now, if you don't like surprises, then life may be pretty challenging for you, because you're not going to be able to control any large proportion of the events in your life. But it was exciting. I did some sprint tries, did an Olympic, did a half, and then went for the full. And kind of in a nutshell, so mid-November, think about Thanksgiving time. I don't know who lives in North Carolina listening, if anybody. Think about what the weather's like mid-November in North Carolina. And then think about jumping in the water to swim 2.4 miles. I know you'd probably rather stab your eyes out with a pitchfork. It was the coldest experience of my life. I think it left a chill in my bones that didn't go away for about 3 years, because even 60-degree weather started freezing me to death after that event. And so the swim, almost died once there. Ended up almost getting hypothermia, and swam about halfway, and then had to get rescued. Like, legit. I don't know if anybody listening has ever competed in a water event where you have people with paddle boards in the water kind of supervising, and usually they don't have to do anything. Well, the poor soul who was on the paddleboard near me at mile marker 1.2, he had to do something. So I don't remember if I yelled or what, but had to get rescued, had to get warmed up, and at that point they didn't care what I did. So got warmed up and jumped on the bike. So kind of forewent the second half of the swim, but whatever. What's 1.2 miles and 140.6, and got through the bike. Pretty challenging, but definitely the halfway mark. Thought about quitting, and made it through 112 miles on the bike. The weather warmed up a little bit, midday. And then the run started maybe around 6 p.m. And I was feeling okay. Actually, my butt was so numb from the bike, the run just felt good. And I I can honestly say I was using different muscles, because definitely the bike-specific muscles really started hurting and getting numb. The running just felt really good, or as good as it can feel at that point. And started running, felt pretty swift, and then the sun went down again. Imagine that, does it every day. And I didn't have, you can only grab supplies at kind of the halfway mark of these things, more or less. So when I started the run, I didn't grab a hoodie, I didn't grab anything. I was running in skin tight Under Armour stuff. And then sun went down, started getting really, really cold, and made it halfway. And about that time, started getting the chills that wouldn't go away. And they had chicken noodle soup for you at the aid stations every mile, and even the chicken noodle soup had gotten cold. I mean, it was just not a good time. And I know some people listening are like, why would you even subject yourself to this? Surely you didn't pay for this. Yeah. These things run about $700. Not a cheap sport by any means. And anyway, made it halfway through the run, 13.1, and then ran about 0.9, I think just about one more mile to the next aid station. And a very nice volunteer lady. They always have the best volunteers at these runs and triathlons. The best volunteers. And this lady helped me out, turned her car on. She had parked near the aid station, turned the heat on, and kind of got me a little bit warm. But it was by far too late, so ended up going to the ER and getting the steroid dose that I needed, the corticosteroid, because by that time, I mean, it was more than just chills. It was body breaking, not just breaking down because of the race, but breaking down because my body doesn't produce enough cortisol, which is another element of the CAH I mentioned. And so that was, went to the ER, and man, coldest experience of my life. I still remember I had about 6 warm blankets going down the hallway. I don't know if any of you have been in the ER, and you got that hospital smell going on, and you're sitting in the moving bed that everyone's pushing, and they do usually have nice blankets, and just covered in warmed blankets. And still, it took a while. I still remember it took a while to get warmed up, and they got the corticosteroid IV'd, and luckily made it. And that was when I was 20. First Ironman experience, and I still digest why, because everyone's got these goals, everyone's got what they want to do. No one tells you what happens if it doesn't work, right? Whatever it is, whether you're a teenager in your 20s or beyond, no one gives you the what if you fail speech. They always give you the this is how you succeed speech. And I still digest what to take from it. I can say that, I can, just going off the cuff a little bit, I can say a few things that I learned. One was, I can honestly say I did that race, I pursued that race for myself and for myself alone. And if you do things for yourself alone, you might succeed. I mean, plenty of people do. But even if you do, it won't be worth it. And you'll be a lot more prepared mentally, spiritually, and have others on your side when you pursue things for a cause greater than yourself, right? Whether that's for a relative, for friends, for your God, your faith. Things tend to go a lot better when you pursue things for a higher cause other than yourself. And I honestly do believe that's one reason why it didn't work out for me. I could have been more prepared for sure. Could have asked around, could have posted up online some questions. Hey, what do I need to know, at mile 130 to finish this Ironman out? Or what do I need to know in North Carolina in November to be prepared for the weather. Plenty of things I probably could have done, a little more preparation to try to succeed. But I can tell you this too, what I did do afterwards, which to me is kind of a testament. Your character is forged when you're tested, right? And when I did fail that first time, I was tested as to what would I do. And crazy me, I signed up like the next week for a race in Florida. So I was like, bump this, I'm not going back to North Carolina in the fall. And a year later went to Florida and finished an Ironman, made it through. Didn't make it through very fast, but made it through, and that's another story. But I definitely learned a lot more through the failures than the successes. And one thing that I've learned really in the last few years that I hope some of you will take to heart, because it's better to take this to heart now rather than when you're in your 20s or 30s, is take this to heart. Fail forward. And that's been said by numerous great writers, authors, speakers. John Maxwell is one of my favorites. He writes, probably a lot of teenagers haven't read his content. He has a book, I believe it's called Failing Forward. And that's really the key. Whenever you fail, you don't fall backwards. Whenever you fail, you just make sure your momentum pushes you forward, whatever that looks like. Maybe you don't try the same thing twice. So I didn't try the same race the next year, the exact same race in the exact same location. I said, let's try to change things up a little bit. And Florida was really nice. Great experience down there. I really need to go back, actually. But you fail forward because you're going to experience failure. If you have a fear of failure, which many people do, most people do, it doesn't go away. It's probably one of the leading causes of anxiety is fear of failure. If you have a fear of failure, more than likely you will never really succeed at what you're meant to succeed at. Because like I said, everyone wants something bigger. Everyone wants significance. Well, how do you do that? You attempt big things, right? Whatever it is, whatever dreams are on your heart, you attempt them, you make strides, you make progress, you grow yourself, and eventually you commit and you do them. You just do it. You just try it out. And you might fail the first time somehow, some way. It may not go exactly how you planned it, but that doesn't mean that you're a failure by any means. Just because you tried out for that school play or that school team and you didn't make it, it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means that maybe you need to try a little bit harder, right? It's an opportunity. Okay, so maybe you didn't make it, and now instead of practicing for that thing, whatever it is, you have time to practice on your own terms, right? So instead of going to practice after school with everybody else and they're doing their thing, you can say, you know what, I'm going to do my thing. And whereas they're practicing 2 hours, maybe I'm going to say I'm going to practice 2.5, right? Up the ante a little bit. And you can say, I'll see you next year, right? Whatever that is, or I'll see you next tryout. I'll see you next season. I'll see you in the weight room. I'll see you out in the field. I'll see you on the track. I'll see you on the stage. Whatever it is, it's an opportunity whenever you fail to do better next time around, right? Look at it that way. Don't look at it as, oh, I'll never be good enough. I'll never be able to do this thing. I tried once and it didn't work out. If you really want it, you just keep trying. Keep trying until it works. Keep tweaking. I was thinking about this the other day. Kind of a funny little metaphor. Have you ever try to open a door and you push and you come to find out it's a pull door, right? But it's like the most embarrassing thing. Especially if you're with somebody, or your guy, maybe there's a cute girl around, kind of, you just, if you tried pushing, maybe just push a little harder or something, like maybe you just need to put a little more oomph into it. I was thinking about this the other day. How many decisions can go into just trying to gain access into a building, a restaurant or whatever. Let's say you try to open a door and it just doesn't open. Whatever, you try pulling, it doesn't open. What do you do next? What's your natural inclination? You probably push. So you try push. Let's say it still doesn't open. All right. What's your next inclination? If there's a door right next to it, then you pull that one. And so let's say it doesn't open there. Then, okay, maybe you try to push or whatever. It doesn't open. Then you start looking for signs, right? So maybe you start looking for signs like hours on the door. And you see, okay, it's open right now. So why is the door not opening? And then you go to your next check. You look inside the glass. Okay, there's people in there. All right, so this is a little bit strange. And then you go to some other check. Maybe you ask around. Maybe there's somebody standing there. You're like, hey, did you try to open this door recently? And they, maybe they say, yeah, to no avail. I'm not sure what's going on. And then maybe you try knocking on the door because there's people in there. And no one can hear you because it's so loud in there. Everyone's talking. Everyone's doing their thing. No one's paying attention. They're all focused on their own little world, their own little bubble. Right? They're not looking at the door. Right? So you go through all these checks just to gain access into something, whatever it is, whatever that thing is. You're trying to gain access, trying to get into it. You go through these checks. If you had stopped at the second check, one of those other checks afterwards could have worked. Right? So, but by now none of them would work. And then, maybe you do one final check, whatever it is. Maybe you look down and you see maybe there's an extra lock that someone accidentally locked that you can see through between the two doors. And then, maybe you've jerry-rigged something trying to gain access into the house after hours like teenagers never do, or trying to sneak out after hours, whatever. So maybe you slip your credit card. I don't know, do kids have credit cards these days? You slip your credit card through the middle of the doors and you get the hook, you unlock it. Apparently this door doesn't have very good security. There's clearly another lock on there that they would have used after hours. And finally, that second hook that was mistakenly locked, or someone played a cruel trick and you got the doors open, right? You made it open. Whatever it is, I was thinking about this the other day because I pulled on a door and pushed and it wasn't opening. It turned out they had one of the doors closed. That's really a metaphor on your aspirations of life. Whatever you want to do, you just got to keep trying, right? And the original way of the outcome that you're pursuing, your original way of doing it, may not be the way that works out. Maybe you have to go to trial number 2 or trial number 3, trial number 4. Get help, ask questions, do research, look around, use your awareness, figure it out. Part of life is just having the willingness to figure it out. And that goes back to what I was saying about the fear of failure. Don't be afraid. There's always a way. So some of you, I'll give a little plug kind of for engineering. One thing that getting into engineering, which originally I wanted to do architecture kind of when I was younger and eventually made the turn to engineering. One thing engineering does, I think, as you learn and grow as an engineer, is you no longer accept that there is no possible solution. And I think people, students, teenagers, it's never too early to start thinking and believing that there is always a way, that maybe my idea of what I want to be is not the only way for me to be fulfilled. And maybe the first step is I need to surround myself with people that are going to build me up, with a good environment. Maybe I need to find people that give smiles around the hallways at school, that are doing great things, that have a great attitude. Maybe I need to start surrounding myself with them. Or maybe I need to find people, maybe I do have a great attitude and I need to help bring others up. Maybe I need to find them, seek them out. What if you made it your mission to maybe just call it once a week? That you're going to make it your daily goal or your weekly goal once a week. That I'm going to seek out somebody who seems like they're a little bit down, and I'm going to help to raise them up. It doesn't even have to be anything special. You don't even have to know their situation. Sometimes you don't even have to say anything to them. You just need to ask them a question. That can be one of the greatest ways of gaining trust, is just asking somebody a question and learning their name. And maybe that's just what you need to do to help others overcome that fear of failure, to build others up. And so kind of how I want to maybe start to end this episode, I think I've been going on 30, 40 minutes. I want you all to start thinking about a vision for your optimal future. What do you really want? What do you want to become? It's never too early. It doesn't matter what the others are saying around you. Bad influences, even good influences. What do you want? What do you want to get out of these years? Don't just waste these years. They're there for a reason. The process is there for a reason. I mean, without those years of middle and high school and the ups, the downs, the avulsion fracture that I got playing baseball, running to first base, recovering, going through physical therapy for 6 months for that, strained hamstrings, broken thumb, broken elbow, trying to, did I say broken ankle yet? Broken ankle, weird jet ski accident. I don't think I've rode a jet ski since. Through all those times of struggle, of just wishing I had more clarity, wishing that I could really see the purpose of what's going on. Why go through this pain? Why God me? A lot of people ask that. Why God me? Why God this? And it's legitimate. More often than not, it's legitimate. Start to ask not just why, but help me to see why. Help me to see why. And don't ask and put a timeline on it, because it may not become apparent in a month or 2 months or 6 months. But I can tell you this, the sources of struggle and pain that most of us go through as teenagers often can become the foundation for our platform for the rest of our life. And I know for some that's not going to be the answer that you wanted to hear, because it doesn't take away the reality of the difficulty of this current season. And I get it. It's relatively easy for me to say from a 26-year-old perspective to a 15-year-old perspective that it's going to be okay. It's relatively easy for me to say that. I can just speak from my own experiences, of feeling depressed oftentimes. I got into heavy music, right? And I still love heavy music, and a lot of listeners probably enjoy heavy music. And this was at a time, how often ago, how long ago, 10, 15 years ago, when heavy music was still relatively new. And it wasn't something that I could necessarily even share. I had to kind of hide it from my parents, because, they kind of would question, what's wrong with you listening to this kind of, it's not even music. And, there were certainly reasons why we're drawn to what we're drawn to. And the raw for me, for music, the raw emotion of the expression of what these artists, were going through and facing just appealed to me, and their ability to express it to the world in a song, I thought was the coolest thing. And I loved heavy music, bands, As I Lay Dying, Parkway Drive, The Devil Wears Prada, For Today, August Burns Red. The list could go on and on. Those were a couple of the originals that I enjoy and still enjoy today. And there's just more to the story. That's not the end. The depression, the negativeness, that's not the end. It's really just the beginning, right? It's just the beginning. Wherever you are, we often magnify our current situation. We're in high school, and it's tough. The classes are tough, and fitting in is tough. Fitting in, it's gonna go out of style, right? It's kind of, I don't know necessarily what it's like in high school right now. I see the trendy culture or whatever, sticking out. Fitting in, I think, is going to go out of style. Eventually, people are going to say, "Why are you trying to fit in?" That's going to be the unusual side, is people trying to fit in. And I'm not saying go out of your way not to fit in. I'm just saying be comfortable with who you are and who you're created to be, and don't let anyone tell you that you're not good enough, that it's not going to be okay. Little things growing up, Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Were, growing up, those are things that I enjoyed as a young teenager, old teenager. I don't know if they're cool anymore or not. I don't really care. If I had an old friend want to try to play, I don't remember how to really play, but I'd be like, heck yeah, let's try to play this thing. It was kind of a fun game. But whatever it is, growing up in school, it's like, if you enjoy something that's not in, or it's not part of the popular crowd, or could face opposition, whatever that looks like, it almost feels like you have to live some kind of double lifestyle, right? It's like at school you're telling, no, I don't enjoy that at all. That's stupid. I think everyone who does that's stupid. And then, on Saturday, you're like, playing that game or whatever, looking around. I don't know if you're in public or whatever, looking out the window of your house, making sure those people at school aren't like stalking your house because you're on Facebook and your address is on Facebook and everyone knows where you live or whatever, and your phone number's on Facebook, and maybe there's a way people could hack and find your phone number, find where you live. You're like, oh, I hope no one figures out that I like this. Like, who cares? Right? Like, yeah, just tell them, yeah, I enjoy it. What's it to you? What are you gonna do about it? Yeah, I enjoy it. Keep doing whatever you like to do. I mean, it's cool. It's your thing. It's like, who cares? Be yourself. Be yourself. Be comfortable with yourself. I mean, that's it. That's it. So I think I already said I was going to start to try to close, so now I'll really try to close. Be excited. Be excited, because you have no idea. I mean, you just have no idea the impact that you can make. The impact that the one person influencing culture, which influences others, and before you know it, culture just looks dramatically different than it did yesterday. The impact that you can make in your schools and your teams, the impact that you'll make in the decisions you make today to set your future in your career, in your pursuits, in where you serve, to change your church, to change your community. I mean, that's why you're here. Before you know it, you students out there, you're going to be impacting the community. In fact, you already can. A lot of you already are, right? I mean, isn't that cool? Isn't that idea cool, to make a legitimate impact, to make a difference in the community at age 13, whatever you are? I mean, I think that's the coolest thing ever, and that's inspiring. Whenever adults, call us adults, whenever we see, teenagers on fire to make a difference, I mean, that inspires us. Lead up. Don't just lead down. Don't just lead sideways. Lead up. You have full permission. I grant you full permission to lead up. Leadership has no age barrier. So it's exciting. I'm excited, right? So it's the beginning of summer right now. And I don't know if a dozen people are going to listen to this, whatever. It's the beginning of summer. What are you going to do this summer to set yourself up, to set your school up, your teams up, your community up to make a difference this coming year? Not just this coming year, to make a lasting difference. If you're new to a school, what are you going to do to brand yourself and rebrand the culture of the school you're going to? If you're a senior, what are you going to do with this time, this last year? You're just going to use it to party and gratify yourself, or you're going to use it to build others up, to make a difference that's going to last, so that after you leave, people are still talking about you, right? Wouldn't that be cool if after you leave, if years after you leave your school, middle school, high school, college, people are still talking about you? That would be cool. That would be cool. I would envy you. I don't know if y'all have what it takes to set that kind of example. Maybe you do. I guess we'll see.